You know what nobody tells you about failure? It doesn't announce itself with trumpets and drama. It whispers. It creeps in wearing comfortable shoes. It shows up as that one small thing you do every single day that you know deep in your bones you absolutely know is holding you back. And yet, you do it anyway. Picture this. It's 3 in the morning. A man stands in his bathroom, staring at his reflection in the mirror. His eyes are bloodshot, not from lack of sleep, but from the glow of his phone screen. 6 hours. He's been scrolling for 6 hours straight. Tomorrow, well, today now, he has a presentation that could change his career. His kids haven't seen him present at dinner in 2 weeks. His wife stopped asking him to come to bed hours ago. And here he is, thumb moving in that automatic downward motion, consuming content he won't remember by breakfast. He catches his own eyes in the mirror and feels something break inside, not dramatically, just a quiet crack. The kind that tells you something fundamental has shifted. That man was destroying his life 1 minute at a time, and the weapon he was using was a habit so small, so seemingly insignificant, that he'd convinced himself it wasn't even a real problem. Just a little stress relief, just staying informed, just a few minutes to unwind. Except those few minutes had metastasized into his entire existence. Here's what I've discovered after working with thousands of people who've transformed their lives. Your habits are not random, they're not accidents. They're precise, calculated decisions your brain made at some point to solve a problem. The issue is, your brain doesn't care if the solution is actually good for you. It only cares that it works right now, in this moment, to eliminate discomfort or create pleasure. Your brain is efficient, not wise. Think about that for a second. Every weak habit you have the snooze button you hit 5 times every morning, the cigarette you light up when stress hits, the junk food you devour when you're alone, the Netflix episodes you binge when you should be building your future. Every single one started as your brain's attempt to help you, to soothe you, to protect you from something uncomfortable. And now it's a prison guard. I want you to understand something crucial. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are not lacking in character or discipline. You are simply operating with faulty programming, and faulty programming can be rewritten. Let me tell you about Sosthane. Brilliant architect, the man could design buildings that made people weep with their beauty. He'd won international awards. His firm was thriving. By every external measure, he was successful. But Sosthane had a secret that was eating him alive. He couldn't go 90 seconds, I'm not exaggerating, 90 seconds without checking his phone. In meetings with clients, he'd feel his pocket vibrate with a phantom notification and his hand would move automatically. During dinner with his family, his eyes would dart to the screen lying face down on the table. When he was supposed to be reviewing blueprints, his fingers would unlock his phone before his conscious mind even registered the impulse. His marriage was crumbling. His 12-year-old daughter had stopped trying to talk to him because she knew she was competing with a screen she'd never win against. His creative work, the thing that had made him exceptional, was suffering because deep focus had become impossible. He'd become a reactive puppet, dancing to the tune of every notification, every buzz, every digital interruption. Sosthane came to me desperate. He'd tried everything. He'd deleted apps. He'd set timers. He'd made promises to his wife. He'd sworn on his children's lives that tomorrow would be different. And every single time, within hours, he was right back in the pocket, thumb scrolling, brain flooding with dopamine, reality fading into the background. I don't understand, he told me, and I could hear the anguish in his voice. I built a business from nothing. I put myself through school while working 2 jobs. I completed projects that other architects said were impossible. Why can't I control this one stupid thing? And that's when I told him the truth that changed everything. Because you're trying to fight a habit with willpower, and willpower is the weakest force in human psychology. Your brain operates on a principle that neuroscientists call neuroplasticity. Every single thing you do repeatedly carves a pathway in your brain. Think of it like walking through a forest. The first time you walk a certain route, you have to push through underbrush, step over fallen logs, navigate carefully. It takes effort. It takes attention. But if you walk that same path every single day for weeks, months, years, what happens? A clear trail emerges. Eventually, you could walk it in the dark, half asleep, on autopilot. You don't even have to think about it anymore. That's exactly what's happened with your weak habits. You've walked that neural pathway so many times that it's now a superhighway. Your brain can execute that habit with almost zero conscious thought. It's automatic. It's comfortable. It's easy. And here's the devastating part. Your brain loves easy. Your brain is designed to conserve energy, to find the path of least resistance, to automate everything possible so you don't have to waste precious cognitive resources on decisions you've already made 1,000 times before. So when Sosthane reached for his phone, he wasn't making a conscious choice. He was running a program, an automatic sequence of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that his brain had perfected through repetition. The trigger a moment of boredom, a flash of anxiety, a pause in conversation would fire. His brain would recognize the pattern, the craving would surge, and his hand would move before his conscious mind could even engage. This is why your weak habits, they feel so powerful. Because they are powerful. They've been reinforced every single time you've executed them. They've been rewarded with immediate gratification. They've become part of your identity, woven into the fabric of who you are. You don't just have the habit. At some level, you've become the habit. But here's what most people miss, and this is absolutely critical. If habits are learned, they can be unlearned. If neural pathways can be carved, they can also be abandoned. If your brain created this prison, your brain can unlock it. Not through some mystical transformation, not through superhuman willpower, but through understanding the mechanism and deliberately, systematically, using that mechanism in reverse. The first step isn't trying harder. It's seeing clearly. It's standing in that bathroom at 3 in the morning and finally admitting the truth. This habit is killing you, not tomorrow, not someday. Right now. Every single time you execute it, you're choosing it over your dreams, over your family, over the person you know you're capable of becoming. There comes a point where the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of change. It's not a gentle realization. It's not a casual thought that crosses your mind while you're making coffee. It's a lightning bolt of clarity that strikes when you finally understand that every day you continue this pattern, you're not just maintaining the status quo, you're actively destroying your future. Most people wait for this moment. They think transformation requires some external force, some catastrophic event that will finally shock them into action. A health scare, a divorce, a firing. They're waiting for rock bottom because they believe that's when change becomes possible. But I'm here to tell you something that might upset you. Rock bottom is a choice. You can decide right now, today, that you've had enough. You don't need permission from circumstance. You need a decision. Let me introduce you to Bedelia Martinez. For 20 years, this woman was one of the most respected Olympic coaches in the world. She trained athletes who broke records, won medals, transformed their bodies into instruments of perfection. She understood discipline, sacrifice, and the psychology of peak performance better than almost anyone alive. She could look at an athlete and diagnose exactly what was holding them back, then create a protocol to fix it within weeks. But Bedelia had a secret she kept hidden behind her professional success. Every single night, after the athletes went home, after the cameras stopped rolling, after she'd given her speeches about commitment and excellence, she would sit alone in her car and devour an entire bag of candy. Sometimes 2 bags. Chocolate, gummies, anything with enough sugar to trigger that chemical cascade in her brain that momentarily silenced the voice, telling her she was a fraud. 20 years, 7,000 nights of the same cycle. The shame would hit before she even finished chewing. She'd promise herself that tomorrow would be different. She'd throw away the wrappers, brush her teeth 3 times to eliminate the evidence, and go to bed hating herself. Then the next evening, like clockwork, she'd find herself in the parking lot of a convenience store, telling herself, just this one last time. The contradiction was destroying her. How could she preach discipline while being enslaved to sugar? How could she teach mental toughness while she couldn't make it 12 hours without a fix? She'd tried everything. Elimination diets, therapy, accountability partners, meditation. Nothing stuck. The habit always returned, sometimes within days, always within weeks. Then something happened that changed her entire understanding. One of her athletes, a young swimmer with extraordinary potential, came to her in tears. The girl was sabotaging herself. She'd trained perfectly for weeks, then binge eat the night before competitions and destroy her performance. Bedelia looked at this athlete she cared about deeply and suddenly saw herself. The same cycle, the same shame, the same powerlessness masked by external success. In that moment, Bedelia realized something profound. Willpower is not a strategy. It's a temporary surge of energy that always runs out. She'd been approaching her habit the same way most people do, by trying to white-knuckle her way through cravings, by attempting to simply stop through force of will. and it had failed for 20 years because she was using the wrong tool for the job. Your willpower is like a muscle that gets exhausted with use. Every decision you make throughout the day depletes it slightly. By evening, when you're tired and stressed and emotionally drained, your willpower is at its weakest point. And that's exactly when your habits tend to strike. They're not stupid. They've learned when you're vulnerable. They wait until your defenses are down, and then they attack with surgical precision. So Bedelia stopped trying to eliminate the craving. Instead, she got curious about it. She started tracking exactly what triggered the urge. Not just stress or tiredness, she got specific. She discovered it wasn't random at all. The craving hit hardest after difficult conversations with athletes' parents. It intensified when she felt she hadn't performed well during training sessions. It became almost unbearable when she'd spent the day comparing herself to other coaches. The craving wasn't about sugar. It was about soothing a specific emotional state. Once she identified the real trigger, she could address the real problem. She wasn't hungry for candy. She was hungry for validation, for relief from the perfectionism that had driven her entire life, for a moment where she didn't have to be on anymore. Here's what she did next, and this is the key that unlocks everything. She didn't try to stop having the craving. She changed what she did when the craving appeared. She created a replacement routine. When that familiar urge bubbled up, instead of driving to the store, she called one specific friend who understood her struggle. Not to confess or seek sympathy, but to connect. 10 minutes of genuine conversation. That's it. Sometimes she'd take a 5-minute walk around the facility. Sometimes she'd write 3 things she was grateful for from that day's training session. The first 3 days were excruciating. Her brain screamed for the sugar. It threw tantrums. It told her the replacement activities were stupid and wouldn't work. It manufactured reasons why just this once wouldn't matter. But she'd made a pact with herself, 72 hours. 3 days, without negotiation, without exception, without the possibility of failure. She would honor this commitment to herself the same way she'd honor a commitment to her athletes. Something miraculous happened on day 4. The craving appeared, like always, but it had lost some of its power. The neural pathway was still there, but it wasn't quite as automatic. By day 7, she noticed herself going through an entire evening without thinking about candy. By day 14, the old habit felt foreign, like something a different version of herself used to do. 6 months later, Bedelia was completely free. Not because she had superhuman discipline, but because she understood that you cannot eliminate a habit, you can only replace it. Your brain needs that trigger routine reward loop. It's how we're wired. But you get to choose what routine fills that space. You get to decide what reward you're pursuing. This is the truth about habit change that changes everything. You're not in a battle against yourself. You're in a process of redirection. The energy that powers your weak habit doesn't disappear when you stop the behavior. It needs somewhere to go. If you don't consciously channel it towards something productive, it will find its way back to the destructive pattern. Every single time. The moment of decision isn't when you feel motivated. Motivation is emotional, and emotions are unreliable. The moment of decision is when you commit to a specific replacement behavior and agree to execute it for 72 hours minimum, regardless of how you feel. No negotiations, no exceptions, no internal debates about whether you really need to or whether tomorrow might be better. 72 hours of mechanical execution. Your weak habit has been running on autopilot for months, maybe years. It's not going to release its grip because you had an inspiring thought. It's going to release its grip because you consistently, relentlessly, stubbornly choose a different path until that path becomes the new automatic response. You want to know the real reason most people fail to break their weak habits? They're fighting the wrong battle. They're trying to become a different person while living in the same environment that created the person they currently are. They're attempting to build new patterns while surrounded by all the triggers, cues, and conditions that reinforce the old ones. It's like trying to quit smoking while carrying a pack in your pocket. The environment always wins. Let me tell you about Garrett Sullivan, corporate executive, corner office on the 42nd floor, 6-figure salary, respected by his peers. But Garrett had a problem that was costing him everything that mattered. He was a chronic procrastinator, not the casual, I'll do it later type, the severe kind. The kind where critical projects would sit untouched until the absolute last possible moment. Then he'd panic, pull an all-nighter, deliver something mediocre, and hate himself for weeks. His reputation was suffering. Opportunities were passing him by. He'd watch colleagues get promoted while he stayed stuck, not because he lacked talent, but because people couldn't rely on him. His stress levels were through the roof. His relationships were strained because he'd cancel plans to handle emergencies that were only emergencies because he'd procrastinated in the first place. Garrett tried all the conventional approaches: time management seminars, productivity apps, motivational videos. He'd set alarms, create schedules, make elaborate plans, and every single time, when the moment came to actually work on the important task, he'd find himself doing something else. Checking email, reorganizing his desk, research that didn't need to be done right now, anything except the one thing that actually mattered. The breakthrough came when he stopped trying to fix himself and started fixing his environment. He realized something crucial: his office was designed for distraction, not production. His desk faced a window with a view that constantly pulled his attention. His phone sat within arm's reach, lit up with notifications every few minutes. His computer had 17 tabs open at any given time. His door was always open, inviting interruptions. His calendar was packed with meetings that fragmented his day into useless chunks of time too small for deep work. He wasn't weak. His environment was sabotaging him. So he rebuilt everything. He moved his desk to face a blank wall. Boring? Absolutely. Effective? Completely. He established a rule. His phone lived in his desk drawer during work blocks, not on his desk. Out of sight means out of mind, and out of mind means out of reach. When the urge to check it strikes, he installed software that blocked distracting websites during designated hours. Not as a suggestion, as an absolute barrier. He couldn't access them, even if he wanted to, which removed the need for willpower entirely. He created what he called friction points for bad behaviors and greased slides for good ones. Every weak habit was now difficult to execute. Every productive behavior was now the path of least resistance. He scheduled 2-hour blocks of completely uninterrupted time and communicated to his team that during those windows, he was unavailable. Unless the building was literally on fire. He closed all browser tabs except the single one related to his current task. He prepared his workspace the night before so that when he arrived in the morning, the important work was already set up and waiting, requiring zero activation energy to begin. Within 3 weeks, his procrastination habit had essentially vanished. Not because he'd developed iron discipline, but because he'd engineered his environment to make the right choice automatic and the wrong choice difficult. His brain still wanted to procrastinate when hard tasks appeared, but now the friction involved in actually procrastinating was higher than the friction involved in just doing the work. This is the principle that separates people who successfully kill weak habits from people who struggle forever, make the bad habit hard and the good behavior easy. Your environment should be your ally, not your enemy. Most people underestimate how much their physical space controls their behavior. You think you're making conscious choices, but really, you're responding to environmental cues that you don't even consciously register. But here's where it gets deeper. Changing your environment is powerful, but it's not enough by itself. You also need to change your identity. This is the part that most habit change advice completely misses. You're not trying to do different things. You're trying to become a different person. When Garrett was procrastinating, he'd tell himself, "I need to stop procrastinating." But that framing kept his identity intact. He was still a procrastinator who was trying not to procrastinate. The habit was still part of who he was, so he shifted the language. Instead of "I need to stop procrastinating," he started saying, "I'm someone who handles important tasks immediately." Not as an aspiration, as a statement of current identity. Every time he completed a task without delay, he wasn't just checking something off a list. He was casting a vote for this new identity. He was providing evidence to himself that this is who he is now. And here's the thing about identity. You will always act in accordance with who you believe you are. If you believe you're a procrastinator trying to change, you'll keep procrastinating. If you believe you're someone who executes immediately, procrastination becomes inconsistent with your self-image. Your brain craves consistency. It wants your actions to match your beliefs about yourself. So when you shift the identity, the behaviors follow naturally. Garrett didn't have to force himself to work anymore. Working immediately was just what he did, because that's who he was. He also did something brilliant with accountability. Most people think accountability means having someone to report to, someone who'll be disappointed if you fail. That's weak accountability. Garrett created what I call structural accountability systems that makes success visible and failure impossible to hide from yourself. He kept a simple chart on his wall. Every day, he completed his most important task before noon. He marked it green. Every day he didn't, he marked it red. No judgment, no shame, just data. After 2 weeks, he had a visual representation of his pattern. Seeing those green boxes accumulate became its own reward. Breaking the streak became painful not because someone would yell at him, but because he didn't want to be the person who broke his own streak. He was competing with himself, and the scoreboard was undeniable. Small wins started compounding. One productive day became 2, then 5, then 10. The momentum built on itself. Success bred confidence, which bred more success. His brain started associating work with accomplishment rather than anxiety. The positive feedback loop replaced the negative one. But Garrett also learned the most dangerous trap in habit change, the one exception mentality. After 3 months of consistent execution, he had a particularly stressful week. Family, emergency, crisis at work, everything hitting at once. He thought to himself, just this once, I'll let myself slide. I've been doing so well. 1 week won't matter. That's the lie your old habit tells you when it's trying to claw its way back into your life. Just this once is never just once. It's the doorway that lets the entire pattern flood back in. Because habits don't care about your reasons. They don't distinguish between valid excuses and weak ones. They only recognize repetition. 1 exception becomes 2. 2 becomes a week. A week becomes, I don't know what happened, I was doing so well and now I'm back where I started. Garrett caught himself. He recognized the voice of his old identity trying to reassert control, and he made the hard choice. Even during the crisis, even when everything was falling apart, he honored his commitment to himself. Not perfectly, not elaborately, but he did something toward his important work every single day, even if it was just 15 minutes, even if the quality wasn't his best. Because maintaining the identity was more important than the output. That decision saved everything he'd built. The habit held, the identity strengthened, and when the crisis passed, he didn't have to rebuild from scratch. He was still the person who executes immediately, who doesn't negotiate with himself, who honors commitments regardless of circumstances. There's a moment that happens after you've truly killed a weak habit, not just suppressed it temporarily, not just white-knuckled your way through a few weeks, but actually dismantled it at the root, where you wake up and realize something profound has shifted. You're not fighting anymore. You're not resisting. You're not using discipline to hold back the flood. You're simply free. And that freedom changes everything about how you see yourself and what you believe is possible. 6 months after Sostain put his phone in a drawer during family dinners, his daughter asked him a question that brought tears to his eyes. Dad, when did you start caring about what I say? She wasn't being cruel. She was genuinely curious. Because for the first time in years, he'd been fully present. He'd listened to her stories about school without his eyes darting to a screen. He'd asked follow-up questions. He'd remembered details from previous conversations. He'd become the father he'd always wanted to be, but couldn't access because a weak habit had built a wall between them. His marriage transformed. His wife stopped feeling like she was competing for attention. The resentment that had been building for years began to dissolve. Intimacy returned, not just physical, but emotional. They talked again. Really talked. About dreams and fears and plans for the future. Things they hadn't discussed in so long because every conversation had been interrupted by the ping of a notification, the glow of a screen, the fractured attention of a man who was physically present but mentally absent. His creative work exploded. The deep focus he'd lost returned with a vengeance. He designed a community center that won international recognition, and he absolutely knew that he could never have created it while enslaved to his phone. The project required sustained concentration, the ability to hold complex problems in his mind for hours, to see connections that only emerge when you're fully immersed. His old habit had made that impossible. His freedom made it inevitable. But here's what struck him most powerfully. Killing that one weak habit created a ripple effect across his entire existence. He started waking up earlier because he wasn't scrolling until 2 in the morning. Better sleep led to better energy. Better energy led to better food choices. Better food choices led to weight loss and improved health. He started exercising again. He reconnected with friends he'd been too distracted to maintain relationships with. One habit, one change, and suddenly his whole life was upgrading. This is what nobody tells you about transformation. It's never just about the habit itself. When you break free from something that's been controlling you, you prove to yourself that you're capable of change, and that proof becomes the foundation for every other transformation you attempt. You stop seeing yourself as someone who struggles with discipline. You start seeing yourself as someone who makes a decision and follows through. That shift in identity is worth more than any single behavior change. Bedelia is still coaching athletes. She's better at it now than she ever was during those 20 years of hidden struggle, because she's no longer teaching from a place of concealed shame. She's teaching from a place of hard-won victory. When an athlete comes to her wrestling with their own destructive patterns, she doesn't just offer techniques. She offers understanding. She's been in the prison. She's found the exit. And she can show them the way out with authority that only comes from lived experience. She tells them about the night, 8 months into her freedom from sugar, when she walked past a convenience store and realized she hadn't thought about candy in 3 weeks. Not because she was trying not to think about it, not because she was using willpower to suppress the desire, but because the desire had actually died. The neural pathway had been abandoned for so long that it had degraded. Her brain had rewired itself around the new pattern. The replacement behavior, connecting with friends, taking walks, practicing gratitude, had become the new automatic response. That's the goal. Not perpetual resistance, not endless vigilance, but genuine freedom where the old pattern becomes foreign to who you are now, where choosing the destructive behavior would feel as strange as writing with your non-dominant hand. Possible, technically, but awkward and unnatural and completely inconsistent with your current identity. Garrett still has that chart on his wall. It's been 18 months now. Green boxes stretching for days and weeks and months with only occasional red marks. But those red marks are important too. They remind him that perfection isn't the goal. Progress is the goal. He's not trying to be flawless. He's trying to be consistent. And consistency, over time, creates miracles. His career has taken off in ways he never imagined. When you become known as someone who always delivers, who doesn't need external pressure to perform, who treats self-imposed deadlines as seriously as boss-imposed ones, opportunities find you. He got promoted twice. He's leading projects he wouldn't have been trusted with before, not because his intelligence increased, but because his reliability did. And in a world where most people are still slaves to their weak habits, someone who's genuinely free stands out like a lighthouse. Here's what I need you to understand as we close. Your next 24 hours will tell you everything about your future. Not your intentions, not your wishes, not your plans or goals or dreams, your actual choices. The moment you finish hearing these words, you're going to face a decision point. The old habit will call to you, it always does, and you'll have a choice. Execute the pattern one more time, or choose the replacement behavior. That single choice is more important than you realize, because you're not just deciding what to do in that moment. You're deciding who you are. You're casting a vote for your identity. You're either reinforcing the prison or dismantling it. There is no neutral. There is no just this once. There is only the person you're becoming with each decision. The weak habit that's been controlling you isn't some external force. It's a pattern you've repeated so many times that it feels like part of your nature. But it's not. It never was. You created it through repetition, and you can destroy it the same way, through counter-repetition. Through choosing differently so many times that the new pattern becomes automatic. So, I'm going to ask you to make a commitment right now. Not to me, to yourself. Identify the one weak habit that's costing you the most. The one that, if you killed it, would create the biggest positive shift in your life. You know what it is. You've known for a long time. Stop pretending you don't. Now commit to 72 hours. 3 days of executing your replacement behavior instead of your destructive pattern. No exceptions, no negotiations, no internal debates, just mechanical execution. When the trigger appears, you perform the replacement, every single time, for 3 days. That's all I'm asking. 72 hours. You can do absolutely anything for 72 hours, and those 3 days will change everything, because once you prove to yourself that you can break the pattern, you'll know you're not powerless. You'll know you're not broken. You'll know you're capable of transformation. The person you're meant to become is on the other side of this weak habit. They're waiting for you. They're watching to see if you'll finally choose them over the comfortable prison of familiar patterns. Your future is being written right now. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. In this moment, with the very next decision you make, choose freedom, choose growth, Choose the person you know you're capable of becoming. Kill that weak habit forever, and watch your entire life transform in ways you cannot yet imagine. The power has always been yours. It's time to use it.